there. I am live with Janet Prey. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Angie.
And she knows a lot about a lot. So we decided to do a little teaser about our fabulous interview tomorrow, which will be live as well, so you never know what's going to come about. But I thought I'd grab Janet and ask her a few questions. So in case you don't know who she was, or in case you're wondering what we're going to be talking about, I guess it won't be fishing. It's going to be sewing. We're going to talk the sewing business. And Janet Prey is one of the first people that I ever met in the industry, and she knows a lot about a lot. She has done a lot. And she was a great mentor to me for many reasons, and now we're good friends. So I would like to welcome Janet Prey here on set.
Oh, thank you, Angie. That was very sweet.
Well, it's true. Do you remember the first time we met?
Yes, when you were in the competition. Exactly. Passion for Fashion. Yes.
And I didn't win the first year.
No, my dad thought you should have. He was very upset that you didn't win. He loved your outfit.
And I love your dad because of that. I remember sitting there thinking, I only have a certain amount of time to finish this outfit. For those of you that saw these contests, it was like one episode of Project Runway. It was awesome. But all of a sudden I'm doing silk bias wrapped tulips on my top thinking, what am I thinking? I only have a certain amount of time to do this outfit, and nobody up there when it's on stage is going to know this is bias wrapped. So I loved your dad for noticing that. So by the way, before I get into further, how did you even think of that contest? I love it. It was awesome.
You know, it was a collaboration of ideas. And actually, Judy Raymond, who was the president of Simplicity Pattern Company at the time, she told me of an event that had happened way back in the 70s where they would have something similar. But they were charged to make an outfit for themselves. They only had so many hours, and then they had to ring a bell when they were done. And they were in like a arena pit. And the more I thought about that event, and then I was such a huge fan of Project Runway right from the very beginning. That I kind of like married the two and said, oh, I think we can make this work. But the first year we did it, as you'll remember, we had it over in another room, kind of off to the side where people wouldn't bother the sewers. But also, people weren't totally aware of what was going on over there. So the second year, we brought it into the main arena right in the middle of the exhibit floor where everyone who was shopping or doing demos or whatever would get to see what was going on. And after that, it was the vendors that were set up across from that arena. Every year when they would come back, they'd say, oh, I have to have that same spot because I want to watch that competition. So it
was awesome to watch that way. In fact, the second year when you did put that in the center arena, that was when I did win the competition. But I remember, you're sitting there sewing and being the person behind there, watching the vendor stare at you and watching all the people walk by. It was very unnerving, but it was good for the competition. So it was brilliant, Janet. It was great. And you brought a lot of, after having that competition, you helped a lot of people rise to be noticed in the industry. I'm going to use myself as an example. When I won that contest, I was doing custom clothing. I had no interest in doing what I'm doing now. So you must have had your magic wand.
Well, it just wasn't on your radar, but you had all the talent set for it. You had the skills. You just hadn't considered that you would go in that direction. But being in a big competition like that and getting some national attention is what, was good for a springboard to a career. And you've gone off in a different direction. But I think I asked you the other day, you wish you were back doing the custom, and you said, no, you really love what you're doing.
I really do. So thanks. And I thank you for that one. You had no idea that when you started that competition, and I know quite a few other people that even that didn't win that competition, that you really helped to look at choosing a different career or keeping their career or whatever. And the big thing for me is I've always been an entrepreneur, and this is why the main reason I brought you on the show is because you are such a mentor as far as an entrepreneur, as a woman, as you're a mom. I'm not a mom. I wanted 10 kids, but I'm like a mom to everybody else. So, but you handle so many things, a grandmother, but you run the business so well, and you have your hand in so many different places. And to me, that's the part that I think that everyone's going to be intrigued about. How do you do all of this? That's a big thing. Do you have any like words of wisdom? Now, you can't give everything because it's going in the interview tomorrow, but a teaser.
I'll tell you, at an event you and I were at last summer, one of the women in my class said to me, "You just seem so awesome with all your organizational skills and all that you do. Can you give us any tips?" And I said, "I don't do housework. I don't grocery shop. I don't do housework." Literally. The funny story, not too long ago, I went to use the vacuum cleaner. Once I found it, I plugged it in.
That is bad.
Blood started coming out of it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've gotten the wrong shampooer instead of the vacuum. So I go running in the house. Everybody's laughing at me. Turns out I really did have the vacuum, but somebody had hung the Swiffer above the vacuum and a soap had leaked into it. But that's how bad I am with housework. I didn't know if I had the vacuum cleaner or the rug shampooer. So I'm lucky. Yeah. I'm lucky enough to have a husband who likes doing housework. And so he's been extremely supportive in that way. So that's been a real, the wind beneath your wings kind of thing. He's always been there. He doesn't want to be out front. He wants to be in the back and be in support. So that's really been a big key. And that's something I always tell people when I'm doing some consulting that want to go into business for themselves. It's very, very important that your lifestyle, it'll fit into your lifestyle, and the people that are in your home and that you live with daily will support it and be there for you and not be fighting against you. Because oftentimes that all of a sudden you're not there to make dinner and hubby's not happy and the kids aren't happy, or you can't go to a special events that they have because you are an entrepreneur and you have to stick to business. Sometimes you have to make some rough decisions. So you have to have that lifestyle that it'll fit into.
That's interesting. You mentioned that about your husband because you've met Win, my husband, and what you described about your husband is identical to mine. I mean, I'm so blessed. Now, my cooking, I don't mind house cleaning if I have time, but I don't have time. That's the hard part. But the cooking, you've heard don't go there. You've heard my cooking stories and you're sworn to secrecy. But I tried cooking thinking I'd be a good wife. Well, that didn't work out so well. So, I mean, I hope I'm a good wife. I just really suck at cooking.
I'm pretty sure you're a good wife from the grin on Wynn's face. I can tell he's a happy man.
But I mean, how lucky to have someone who we do that takes our position for our career in firsthand and doesn't mind the other things and handles it. I mean, when I leave, we're both like, oh gosh, how many days? Just 3, and it's because we're together all the time before I started traveling so much. Right. So it's a tough thing. And I totally agree with you. But the house cleaning thing, I have to say, I have one on you now, Janet. You bring up that mango ever.
I did a good 10 years of the majority of the house cleaning. And once the kids were old enough, I started ramping up my business more and doing more. So, and it was really enlightening too, because we kind of switched roles. We both had seasonal businesses. And all of a sudden I'm in the basement, I'm working on a new design, I'm stitching away, and he's yelling, I said, dinner's ready, and I'm not coming. And pretty soon he goes, he's really angry. And it's like, I went to all this effort to make dinner and you won't even come up. And I said, I know exactly how you feel, because the roles were reversed. I felt the same way when he was in his garage and I'm yelling, I made dinner, get in here. So it was an interesting aspect for the both of us to say, oh, now we appreciate each other's positions. And I think that's really healthy for a marriage too.
That is. How long have you been married?
37 years, I think. 37, 38.
A long time. I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, we always forget our anniversary. Usually somebody reminds us a couple of weeks later. We're not overly sentimental people, but we've got a real strong marriage, so it's like, yeah, it's just a date. We're happy.
We always remember our first date, but not our anniversary. But again, the same thing. All right, so since I can't give everything away for tomorrow because this is just a teaser, you have Islander Sewing, and that started with your aunt. Am I correct on that?
It is correct. Margaret Islander was a home sewer, and back in the early 60s, she went to work in a garment training center. So it was a training center for women to learn to sew, to go get a job in a garment factory. So she was a buyer there, but as she watched and saw how these women were learning to sew and how much faster they sewed, how much more efficient and how much better their garments looked than any home sewing method she'd ever seen. And she was a good seamstress, but she was so excited. Basically, she said, see if I can quote her, I decided right then and there, someday I would get this information to other home sewers because I knew they'd be as excited as I am. So I kind of picked up that baton when she decided to retire some years ago.
Which you've done a good job with that, by the way.
Well, it's a lot of fun to create the products and the patterns, and to the greatest thing I get, the most gratification, is when people write me an email and say, you changed my life. You made, I'm just so excited. Just that one little tip was so important. I'm having so much more fun with my sewing now, and I really appreciate your help. That just, like, when you realize that just what you're doing is making people happy.
Right.
You know you're doing the right thing.
You know what, though? What you just said is so true. To know that how many, you teach on Craftsy, how many classes do you have on Craftsy? 4 or 5 now?
5, I think. Yeah, 5.
Okay. So you have students from all over the world. And you're teaching things like your Islander sewing techniques, which is basically, personally, I think that's the best way to sew. It's fast. I didn't even know that's what I was doing when I was designing clothes, but with all the designing clothes over and over and over and over, that, ended up being how I was sewing most of the time, at least.
Yeah, anytime you repeat something, you find the most efficient way to do it. Yes.
Right. And to know that your teaching classes and your books, your patterns are touching people all over the world, for someone to say that you've made sewing fun or you made sewing successful, right there, that is like a golden ribbon, because sewing would be a good word. It's a love-hate relationship. People want to sew so badly. And you and I sew garments. That's mostly the main thing that we do. So if they get frustrated, if it's, the fit or the sewing, or, like my first pair of pants that looked like MC Hammer pants where the crotch was down to my knees. I mean, you're not happy and you don't want to sew anymore. You just absolutely want to throw it in the trash. And
well, I'm sorry. I think that's why Margaret and I made good teachers for this concept, is because we were home sewers before we learned this information. So we know exactly the frustration and the point that the home sewer's at. And so we know exactly when to, the things to bring forward and say, if you only held it this way, or turn it over and put this piece against a feed dog, it'll be easier. It just like lightens the load and makes sewing so much more fun. Can I tell you a quick little, one of my students from Craftsy from France wrote me a little email one day, and she said that she wanted to thank me because, having taken my class on Craftsies, what helped her win the French equivalent to Project Runway.
No way.
Yes.
Were you jumping up and down? What a compliment.
I'm telling you, the tears. It was so sweet. And she said she got, and this is all in a translation, so she said she got a Poison prize. So I'm like, what? Well, the Poison prize, I guess we would call it, I don't know what we'd call it, but what she meant is that one of her prizes was they were going to publish a book that she wrote.
Oh, wow.
But she said, how hard it is to write a book. But she quoted me in the book. She referred to me in the book. So I was so proud. Oh my gosh, that just made my year to hear that made that big of a difference for her. But when you watch those gals on Project Runway and the guys, I can tell you right away who's going to get their projects done on time by the way that they sew with those machines. The ones that know how to hold the fabric and work that machine are going to get done 10 times faster. You watch Christian Siriano, oh my gosh, that guy was always done before everybody else because he knew how to sew.
Right. And there is a difference. If you don't know what you're doing or you don't know what order it's going to go in, you stop and things like that. Well, I was just thinking of something with that Project Runway. I remember many of your competitions after I won. I think it's a little more critical. And I could walk around there and I could tell you who would also finish their outfits. The same thing. Because you'd look and there's 2 hours left and it's like, oh, unless you give that poor child a glue gun, we're in trouble.
They're putting in 11 pins. They're, basting everything. It's just not going to happen. And the saddest thing is that most of us were taught by a grandmother, an aunt, a school teacher, whatever, that you have to pin. You have to baste. It's not going to look anywhere near as nice. And so when Margaret first came on the scene and we're telling people, we're going to teach you how to sew without pins, they would walk away shaking their heads. It can't be done. My grandmother said, whatever. Well, it's because grandma didn't know how to hold the fabric when she put it in the machine, and grandma didn't have to make 79 an hour.
Right.
So we learned from the people who had to make 79 an hour and also meet quality standard. And like you said, when you were doing your custom sewing, you got really a lot more fast or got faster at something because you kept repeating it. So after a while, it's just second nature. It's like driving to the same grocery store every week. You don't have to think about it. Right. And so by taking those clues from those people and then translating it into what home sewers equipment is available, it's just made a huge difference for home sewers. We're really, really proud to be able to continue to deliver that information.
Well, and now they have so many more things for home sewer. For the home sewer. I mean, when I started sewing, I had my first machine was just a little one that just sat on my desk, and my serger that sat on my desk. I didn't have a recessed table. I couldn't afford one, and I didn't have the sources for the other things like that. And I sewed and I made it work. But nowadays there are a lot more sources and they're more economical, I think.
Oh yeah, you have lots of price ranges. And as far as like when you said you used to set your machine up on the table, and of course we teach that that's the worst way to sew. You need the table surface flush with your machine. And so through my Craftsy students, I found out that, well, some people they just don't have the money to go get a really nice cabinet or even an inexpensive table. But many of them, and there's some tutorials on the internet that you can find through Google on how to make your own. You go to Salvation Army, buy a $10 table or dresser, and they've got this little tutorial how to fix it up so you can set that machine, have it flush. But you will sew, even if you continue to use pins and don't know any more of my system, you'll sew so much better because your project isn't dragging off the machine, it's laying flat.
And the seams end up looking better. I mean, no matter what you do, it ends up looking better. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
I had someone ask me, well, did you learn how to sew on YouTube? And well, I'm not that old. Either are you, Janet. And but YouTube's quite young. So no, I didn't learn how to sew on YouTube. I had me, myself, and I, and a handful of books and a stack full of Threads magazines in my office. That was it.
And I would not recommend YouTube because the problem is you don't know the qualifications of the teacher. Now, if you go to YouTube and then you search the qualifications of the teacher, but I've seen some really crazy stuff on there, and I hear these people stating things like they were fact that are absolute opposite of the truth. They're going to send you down the wrong direction, and you're going to be so frustrated. But they think they're saying the right thing. They really are well-meaning, but I would definitely qualify my sewing instructor.
Yeah, I even have to tease my two sisters about that because I said, why don't you take my Craftsy class? And they said, no, we'll YouTube it. And then they called back and said, what Craftsy class is that again? And I told you,
yeah.
Come on, help me out.
Come on.
All right, so I'm only going to keep you for 2 more minutes because tomorrow that's our main interview. But I wanted to give everyone teasers. I know you have your new event, Social. And we're not going to discuss this today. We're going to discuss it tomorrow because you had the American Sewing Expo for a lot of years. You started that show.
Yeah, it was 23 years.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was really exciting. And it was also pre-internet. 23 years ago, there wasn't a lot. There was no YouTube. There wasn't Craftsy. And people came from all over the country by droves because it was a place where you could come and buy sewing equipment. You could see it demonstrated. You could get great fabrics. You could take great classes. And teachers, some of the top teachers from all over the country came. But the climate's changed a little bit in that area where there's more options, and specifically Craftsy and YouTube and the internet have made a huge impact on that market.
I think so too. And tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about that and how, as being an entrepreneur, that we have to make difficult choices, number one, but how to get to these choices. Because I can think now on a smaller scale, but I can think of some things in my business that I had to change completely. And it's just the facts of life. You have to sit down and look at, as a business person, you have to look at the facts. Emotional is okay, but that's not how you can make decisions. Big time.
Absolutely. And the artist personality, and that's what I meet a lot of those people who want to go into the sewing business. They're creative and they're artistic, but they're pretty much one side of the brain is working. They need a partner or a spouse or somebody to help keep them grounded, or they're going to go off like one artist I knew who he was running around and his shoes were taped together. That I'd rather buy more glazes for my pottery than to get new shoes. So he would spend his money on his pottery because he loved his pottery, but it never occurred to him to stop and think of, well, how can I make this profitable? He was just letting like flotsam and jetsam on the ocean, just letting him wherever he was going to go because he was so excited about being creative. And I'm like a 50-50 right brain, left brain. And that's a good thing, but we have a lot of arguments.
Yeah.
I want to do the creative thing, and the other side of my brain's going, that's not cost effective. You can get a good markup. So
that is so funny. I'm going to share that with Wynn tonight because some nights we'll sit in the hot tub after work. We call it our boardroom and talk about the day. And he'll say, "How was your day?" And I said, "Just picture this: the angel and the devil, like this, that they are going to bite each other's head off." It's the same thing, the 50-50 concept. But I want to do this, but I know I'm not going to make any money, and it's going to ruin this. I mean, it's a hard, fine line to do. But you know what? That's a fortunate thing because I don't have to have a business partner, as you don't. Because if you have the 50-50. Although I could use some help sometimes.
Now Wynn's helped you out once or twice in trying to, focus on the finances or whatever. And John's been there for me too. But at the end of the day, you're the entrepreneur. You have to learn from that support they give you. You can't just, you've got to weigh the issues. You've got to have your balance sheet and everything that you do. But it is hard. And for me, I've been in this business 30 years. You can well imagine the changes in everything. Everything. I've had to make decisions. When's the time to have a website? When's the time to have an e-commerce website? When's the time to stop print advertising? There's just so many different decisions that you have to watch the market. You have to listen to intelligent people. And at the end of the day, you got to listen to your gut too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow because deciding on how do you make a decision of what you're going to pass on to someone else, or how do you make the decision of what you're going to keep for yourself? That's something that I have had a lot of issues with, and I've slowly changed that. And sometimes I end up having to go back to something because I trained somebody wrong or something like that, and it's only my fault. At least I think.
Well, that's a good one though. You take responsibility. And that's really key in being an entrepreneur too. But I can't wait till tomorrow when we can talk about, in depth, and maybe we'll get some people to come on and ask some questions. Yes, and say that we might even bring somebody on live if they want to come.
This is the deal for tomorrow. For anybody who hasn't joined on the Entrepreneur Insight, I am using a platform where we will leave a link on Janet's site. I'll leave it here on YouTube, and you can. The tickets are limited. They're free. It's a virtual ticket. So you better want to sign up quickly. I'm not sure what the cutoff is, but If we can't get you in, we'll try. But here's the deal. If they log into here, and I showed Janet this, you see how I see her, she sees me? We can bring you in on the screen. All you need is a camera on your phone or your tablet or your computer and a good mic that works. And we can bring you in live and you can ask Janet questions and or make comments or just pop in. And we can bring up to, I believe, 6 people total up on the screen.
So 4 additional. Yeah.
Yep. So the only difference will be your head smaller and my head smaller. But other than that, that's how it works. So what we're going to do is tomorrow our interview is at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a lot to talk about on the entrepreneur side, and I think that people are going to really enjoy this. So when they log in here, they can leave questions. We'll be able to chat with them, and we'll live stream this on YouTube for anybody who wants to watch it later. So how does that sound?
That sounds excellent. And I want to do a shout out to all you Etsy people or people that make crafts or products that they sell at different markets. I've got some really good information. I can answer some questions that you might be having. I did that for 20 years as well. So Etsy people, come on, join us.
Well, not only that, for those, because I only made a portion of your life, but independent pattern design. We have craftsy classes, teaching, speaking at events, sewing. You ran a full sewing business, like as far as production sewing. So any of these topics you are very, very good at. And so come and ask.
All right. I'm ready. Bring it on.
All right, Janet. See you tomorrow, 12:30. Everyone, see you then. And Janet, I'll look forward to seeing you bright and early.
Okay. Thanks, Angie. Have a good evening in the boardroom.
Yeah, you should do that.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye.